The two most reliable computer models, the European and the GFS model, are now in high agreement that there's going to be a major winter storm pattern developing by next week, where we could see two significant snowstorms impact the bigger cities along the northeast coast, such as New York City, Boston, Philadelphia. All could get involved with major snowfall associated from these next two winter storms. If we were to take a look at the latest depiction of the European model, we do see that by the Saturday, January 21st timeframe, we do see that there's a small low pressure system located right between the border of Kansas and Colorado. And if I were to continue to move forward, there's a high amount of cold air behind it. And of course, we're seeing a somewhat strong southerly flow right around the southeast. That's going to force this low pressure system to move northeastward. However, this ridge isn't strong enough, unlike other ridges we've been seeing this winter, to steer it completely northward to a point where it'll primarily be a rain event for most of the northeast. Because if we were to continue to move forward, the European model wants to bring the snow a lot closer to the coast, and New York City and Philadelphia do receive some snowfall, but it's still mostly a rain event, at least for this first snowstorm. But it becomes a different story taking a look at the second snowstorm, because we do see that this impacts pretty much all the cities, major cities along the northeast along the Interstate 95 corridor, where Washington D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, and Boston get involved on the between the January 25th and 27th time frame, where we see another low pressure system develop just to the east of this just to the west of this low pressure system, where we even see the snow move as far south as Texas, where Dallas could get involved with heavy snowfall as well with this low pressure system, because the European model does expect this low pressure system to move quite a bit southward as a result of a strong northerly flow that's being induced by this previous snowstorm in the northeast, where of course we see the millibar pressure drop down to 983 millibars, which is going to bring that strong northerly flow to continue to steer the jet stream further southward, and of course steer this second low pressure system further southward to where Texas and portions of the southeast could get involved with snow, where we even see Arkansas, Tennessee get involved, the Midwest, of course, Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana get involved with some snowfall, and of course much of the northeast, where this will be considered a very significant snowstorm, where many areas would experience over a foot and potentially up to 2 feet in some localized areas over next week as a result of these two snowstorms moving through. So of course, while I will say it's likely at this point we're going to see a major winter storm pattern develop by next week, as it seems like both of the main computer models are now persisting on that idea. The big question remains where exactly that snow will fall, because with this first snowstorm, the European model wants to take the snow a little bit closer to the coast, where maybe the bigger cities could get involved, and we could easily see that forecast change where the low pressure system moves a little bit further eastward, depending on how strong this ridge is, which I've been talking to you guys about over the past several days. Depending on how powerful this ridge will be, that will determine how quickly this moves northward, because if it moves northward too quickly, then this will primarily bring the snow more so in the western portion, in the eastern portions of the Midwest, rather than the coastal northeast, and would be more of a rain event for the northeast. However, if this ridge ends up being weak enough, or as weak as a European model currently expects, and we could see, of course, that snow move further and further eastward to where a lot of the major East Coast cities could get involved. And of course, the same story goes for this next low pressure system. Depending on how powerful this ridge just to the east of it is, that will determine who will get the heaviest snowfall up along the East Coast, or potentially the Midwest, because if this ridge is a bit too strong, the snow would move a little bit further westward, and the northeast, at least the coastal areas of the northeast, would miss out on experiencing the colder and snowier side of this low pressure system, which is on the northwestern side, because the low pressure system would move just to the west of the northeast, and that would bring more of a southerly flow rather than a northerly wind flow, which would of course raise the temperatures too much for the precipitation to fall in the form of snowfall. And based on what we're seeing right now, it seems like, especially with the 25th to 26th snowstorm, not only the European but the GFS model does expect a heavy amount of snow to impact much of the Interstate 95 corridor cities, and even of course the interior northeast gets involved either way. So I will say with higher certainty that the interior northeast will get involved with some sort of snowfall. The bigger uncertainty remains along the Interstate 95 corridor cities, because of course we don't exactly know which trajectory this low pressure system will take, and even if this old pressure system were to move a little bit westward, the interior Northeast would still get involved with some snowfall as well as the Midwest. So definitely something we're going to need to pay close attention to over the next several days, how strong this ridge is. Now let's take a look at the GFS model scenario. In the GFS's model scenario, we do see that it sets up in a similar fashion where we're going to see a low pressure system come off the Pacific Northwest and move into the Midwest and encounter an unstable environment. However, it's very different when it comes to its trajectory. However, I will point out that the GFS model has been shifting the low pressure trajectory a little bit further eastward as of the latest runs, and that could be key because the GFS model over the next several runs might be caving more and more to what the European model is stating. And if we were to see that, then that would definitely raise certainty that the snow would be a little bit further eastward than the GFS model anticipates. And it's also good to point out that the European model has been the more reliable model this winter. So that's so we definitely might need to lean more to the European model's forecast than the GFS model's forecast, at least when it comes to this winter, based on how reliable the European model has been. But definitely don't disregard the GFS model either, because it's still a very reliable model. We see in the GFS model that the GFS model expects a stronger ridge that's going to force the low pressures to move a little bit further northward a little bit more quickly, and that would bring more snow to the Midwest rather than the coastal Northeast, where pretty much it's entirely a rain event for the interior Northeast, a heavy rain event at that. So if the GFS model scenario was correct, then you might need to be worried about flooding in that scenario along the coastal Northeast. But the interior Northeast still gets involved with some heavy snowfall, which is why I say that the interior Northeast, I'd say it's becoming increasingly likely that you will experience heavy snowfall. The coastal Northeast still a bit more uncertain, but it does become more certain, potentially slightly more certain with this second snowstorm on the 25th, because the GFS model is sort of leaning to what the European model is stating, where we do see that the GFS model wants to bring the snow to the bigger cities along the East Coast, where New York City and Boston and even a little bit of Philadelphia get involved with snowfall with this second snowstorm. It's further out the forecast, so I wouldn't say it's more certain. I take back what I said, that this whole pressure system has a higher level of certainty, because it's still further out than the 23rd snowstorm. However, the fact that the second snowstorm resembles more of what the European model is stating than the first snowstorm could mean that the second snowstorm might have a little bit more certainty than you would expect for a low pressure system that's around 6 to 7 days out. So that's going to be something to pay very close attention to as well, where the GFS model by January 25th wants to bring another major snowstorm to the Northeast. And we do see that we also see snow further southward into Oklahoma as well, and the extreme northern portions of Texas, and we even see some snow in Arkansas. So definitely keep that in mind. So we're going to need to pay very close attention to this. It's becoming likely a major winter storm pattern will develop along the East Coast, but exactly where that heaviest snowfall will fall will be determined by how strong this ridge is, which I'll show you right now. So this is what the European model is forecasting when it comes to the amount of ridging along the East Coast. We do see that the ridging is a little bit weaker in this scenario, which will allow the low pressure system to move further eastward and bring a higher possibility of snow along the East Coast. But it's very different when we take a look at the GFS model in the same time period. Take a look at the GFS's model scenario on January 22nd, when this first low pressure system is in the Midwest. We do see that the bridge is a lot stronger in this scenario, which is why the GFS model expects this low pressure system to move a little bit further northward more quickly than the European model and bring more of a rain event along the Northeast coast, at least for this first snowstorm. Taking a look at what the European model expects when it comes to the 500 millibar height anomaly for this second snowstorm, we do see that there is a ridge that's located along the East Coast. Depending on how strong that ridge is, that will determine how quickly this moves northward. But the European model's scenario brings a ridge that's a lot weaker on the 25th of January than the GFS model, which is the reason why the European model expects snow to be a little bit further eastward. The GFS model, again, shows a very different story where the ridge is a lot stronger, which is the reason why that this low pressure system around January 25th is a lot more northward, because this ridge is a lot stronger, trying to steer this further northward, which does still bring snow along the eastern coast cities such as Boston, New York City, and Philadelphia, but not as much as the European model, since this eventually rain would mix in this scenario if the GFS model was correct. Take a look at the European model's snowfall forecast over the next 8 days, and we do see that this would be a significant snowstorm for not only the Northeast, but even the Midwest and even as far south as Texas, where we do see that some areas in Texas experience 6 to 12 inches of snow over the next 7 days. And this includes the Dallas area, and we do see that this would be a very, very active week when it comes to winter weather next week for the Northeast if this snowstorm pattern were to come for fruition, where we do see that the interior Northeast experiences well over 2 feet of snow, in some areas potentially up to 3 feet, and we do see that even Boston could get involved with over a foot of snow over the next 7 days if the European model is correct, and we could see 6 to 12 inches right around New York City area as well. Same goes for Philadelphia, where you could experience 6 to 12 inches over the next 8 days if the European model is correct. And keep in mind, this snow could move even further eastward, so we could maybe experience close to a foot if the European model ends up shifting its forecast, where it expects the ridge to be a little weaker and we see a low pressure trajectory that's a little bit further southeastward. That's suddenly not out of the realm of possibilities, and we do see much of Pennsylvania experience over a foot of snow, and even Ohio, Louisville, Columbus, as well as Cleveland gets involved with heavy snowfall, and Indiana as well. So this is going to be something to keep in mind, not only for the Northeast, but even the Midwest and the Southeast over the next several days. The GFS's model snowfall forecast, however, shows a little bit of a different scenario, where we do see that it brings heavy snowfall to a lot of the same areas, such as the interior Northeast. However, the places further southeastward don't experience as much snowfall, if any snowfall, where we see New York City maybe experiences right around 1 to 3 inches of snow. Boston maybe around 3 to 6 inches, but Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. in this scenario are absent from the snowfall. So if you're hoping for snowfall, definitely hope that the European model scenario is correct. And we do see that the GFS model does want to bring the snow further westward, where we do see Indiana and Ohio get more involved with 6 to 12 inches of snow, and Texas doesn't get involved with snow in this scenario, but Oklahoma does. So you're definitely going to need to pay close attention further southeastward as well, where you could experience some snowfall, potentially as far south as Dallas. So again, here's a look at the European model's snowfall forecast over the next 7 days. We do see that this brings a heavy amount of snow over a large area in the Northeast, where we do see over 2 feet of snow in the interior Northeast, 6 to 12 inches for pretty much all the Interstate 95 corridor cities. So if the European model is correct, this would be a significant snowstorm for millions of Americans, affecting probably more than half the states along the United States, where even Texas, Arkansas, and Tennessee get involved. So still uncertainty regarding where exactly the snowstorm pattern will build. I will say, though, with confidence that this snowstorm pattern is likely, so pretty much all throughout the eastern half of the United States. You want to at least be aware of this now, because you could be in for a very active week when it comes to winter weather. But thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather related content.